Hi, it's Colin Healey at Premier American Uranium. We're a company focused on the acquisition, exploration, and development of uranium assets in the U.S., primarily in New Mexico, Wyoming, and the Urban Mineral Belt in Colorado. And we're currently drilling at our Wyoming project and planning to be drilling it in New Mexico later this year.
Good to see you. Welcome to London.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, you've just come up from what is our super, super busy conference downstairs. What are you here to do? Who are you speaking to? What do you want to get out of it?
We're here to meet with investors, meet with everybody within the supply chain. The World Nuclear Symposium is a unique conference in that it brings together more than what you'd see at kind of uranium-focused or commodity-focused conferences. So you get to meet the entire supply chain. Yeah. You get the pulse on what the utilities are doing, what groups within the fuel cycle are doing, what uranium explorers and developers are doing. So and the energy down there is very, very high. I haven't seen it like this before. So I'm quite excited because it really confirms my belief that, that we're in a incredibly strong fundamental position in the uranium space.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the industry recognizes these things first, and then the market kind of follows in a way. And obviously, there's a slight disconnect at the moment between what I'm hearing and seeing downstairs and what's going on in the markets at the moment. People concerned about it, or is it just business as usual?
No, I think you're right. I think that the first phase of the uranium price recovery that put the spot price over $100 and pulled back, there was some decent participation from the equity markets in that in terms of investor dollars. And I think that during a period of consolidation of the uranium price, there's still a lot of belief in the sector and a lot of money sitting on the sidelines waiting to jump back in as soon as they get some confirmation in the spot price that it's kind of firmed up. And I think that this is a fantastic time to start looking at that. I think that as we, in the next 12 to 18 months, where the uranium price has to push higher for, we talk about the fundamental strength of the sector all the time, but as we move forward, we're starting to see Kazakhstan, for example, showing us the reality of 2025 production substantially lower than originally kind of postured in September or December of 2023. And, it's just more evidence that it's going to be very, very difficult to backfill and make up that supply deficit.
Yeah, I mean, it's no one thing, right? I think people, I'd say it was kind of signposted, wasn't it? We knew what was coming down the line. But for those who didn't see that, the Kazatomprom reduction in production 2025, it's not just that on its own. It's the demand coming down the line. It's the current supply levels. It's the jump from the current supply levels to what they're going to need to be by 2040. Those are the things that's I guess, excite the market and terrify the market in equal measure. Since there's a lot to do, there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the COP28 conference at the end of last year, you've got 22 countries committing to triple nuclear capacity by 2050. Yeah. I mean, that's an incredible hurdle and an incredibly bullish statement.
It doesn't feel enough, though. It doesn't feel enough.
No, I mean, it absolutely could be higher, and I think it's going to be kind of an exponential development curve. You're going to see a lot more turnkey packages. So the one thing that you're going to get from this kind of build-out in the next 10 years is a lot of experience in building reactors. The more they get built, the more efficient they'll be at construction. It'll be much easier to have cost surety for utilities and investors who are investing in the construction of reactors. More confidence and less risk will mean that you get a real acceleration to the construction and development of those reactors, as we move through 2030 towards 2040. So it does seem like a really huge goal, but I agree, it doesn't seem like enough. I mean, there's no limit to the appetite for power, and we really need to. There's no other way to address emissions for reliable baseload power than nuclear. So,
right. So with the need for energy, need for cheap energy, I think some commentator said, the conversation on the conference at the symposium at the moment is that no one's going to pay to build these things if there's not supply. It's like, builders saying, I'm going to build a tower block, but I don't have anyone to go in it, right? So that's kind of what we face at the moment. So the pressures on guys like you going out there, making discoveries, building up resources, and to be able to supply into that demand, right? How do you feel about the market's ability to kind of fund projects like yours at the moment? Is there a will there to do that?
Yeah, I think that there is. We had a good response to our last financing, which was a sub-receipt financing in the middle of our acquisition of American Future Fuel. But I do think at $80 uranium, our key projects in New Mexico and Wyoming look very attractive and are worth funding. And I think that there's recognition in the market of that. I think that how the market is treating equities right now has a lot to do with trying to pick the right entry point for those people who took money off the table at $100 uranium when uranium stocks were better. So as a group, the uranium stocks, you see some 52-week lows out there. I think that is not indicative of investor sentiment on uranium going forward. I think there will be money there for development as the uranium price goes higher. At $80 uranium, this was kind of a really, really attractive place to be before we saw 100. Yeah. So I think that because we saw 100 and we come back to 80, you're always going to get that response. But what the evidence that we have is that the market will be there as uranium price moves higher, and we saw that in just the most recent cycle. So I think there's a little bit of a kind of speculative trade going on and a uranium market timing trade going on, and I think you'll see the equities behave really nicely as uranium price goes up, and I think that the money will be there for development of new projects commensurate with uranium price.
Right. I think at the moment there's no shortage of uranium explorers or wannabe explorers. And there's a need for them to make discoveries for sure. Some of the things that seem to be lacking in the market beside the kind of the money side of the equation. And it's not just is money available, is it affordable money? Is it going to prohibit them at these prices from being able to make a margin? So all of those things need to be taken, accounted for. But one of the big things that are being pointed out by people like John Borshoff, ex-Paladin, saying, the amount of people in the market who can build or have built mines before, not a lot, like a handful. Mm-hmm. And that's a real problem. So getting new people, new engineers into the space is a problem. Finding people who've worked in mines and plants before is a problem. For you guys, less so, I think. What are the conversations at this show about that topic? Is that sort of recognized by the wider community?
Yeah, I think that it is, and I think it's not just in uranium mining, mine construction. It's also in nuclear reactor construction, especially in the West. There's I think a talent deficit at many points in the fuel cycle that are going to support or that are going to need to be backfilled for demand. Internationally, you still got certain countries demonstrating the capability to kind of deliver turnkey type solutions, but not necessarily from the most favorable jurisdictions. So I think that the Western world and Korea needs to really create a product that competes with the exportation that we see from China and Russia.
Yeah.
But for sure, there's recognition of the talent deficit in the space because of how long of a period we've gone without significant new construction of mines, but also nuclear plants in the West.
Yeah. And so it's to me, it's like that looming wall of problem is coming, because if we need to increase the amount of pounds out there which can be enriched, which is going to feed into this nuclear demand, you assume there's going to need to be a significant increased amount of trained people who can go in and actually deliver that, and that's got to start now.
I agree, and it's not just the training of the people who can build it. that from a regulatory perspective, there's different jurisdictions that haven't processed construction permitting for uranium mines in some period of time, because new mines aren't built that often. So you've got potentially newer people reviewing the applications at every step. There needs to be.
That's a good point.
You need to lean on experience, and there's a bit of a deficit. And I think that's why you're going to get that accelerated effect in the construction of new uranium mines and the construction of new reactors as we move through the next decade and build up that experience. But the first round will probably be slower than the next.
Yeah, and again, looking at, as you say, what China and Russia are doing in terms of the build out of these reactors, they're delivering them in 7 years and less. I think Korea's talking about 5 years and less from approval, which is insane. Because what that does to kind of the cost structure is fantastic. What it does for bringing forward some of this power supply into that demand is fantastic for sure, and that's good news. As one less thing for certain politicians to stop complaining about in terms of the cost base for them. So I want to come running back to Wyoming, if I may, because I think we're going to sort of trot around Wyoming at the end of October, and very much looking forward to that. May even see your project. I hope we do. Peninsula announcing they're going to get into production at the end of this year. You've kind of got a handful of kind of US companies who are producing or near-term producers, and I think that's good for the industry as a whole. It shows the ability to deliver into the US market. Fantastic. Clearly the skill sets are there, and it's also a very good comp for people like you as you kind of move through the phases, isn't it, in terms of margin?
Yeah, I think so. It shows that there's investor appetite to develop and advance these projects. It provides an analog for these projects in terms of their, like you're getting at, the profitability, the margin that they can generate. So, every success that we have in the regions that we operate in is very, very helpful, to say the least. And so we're rooting for them, but it also creates, it backfills some of that experience gap that I was talking about. Those projects are projects that have been moved through the permitting processes in their various jurisdictions, and that helps just expand the experience of the permitting process, and it also builds a talent pool in those regions that we can hopefully lean on as we transition from exploration to resource delineation to future development. So very, very, and we need so much more uranium than those new projects produce in total, that in every way I think it's just additive.
Oh, for sure. I think it's all of the above. We need all of the above. We don't wish ill on anyone. But coming back to that kind of comp thing, it's like, for you, it's kind of like a blueprint of what to do, and in some cases what not to do, how to be efficient, and I say work towards a kind of commercial realization and as a profitable as possible company. Because I think it feels like this sector for the last 10 years has been a case of people making it up and playing the market game rather than the get into business and build game.
Yeah, and there's certainly some of that, and that sometimes depends on investor appetite. There's a little bit of what companies do is investor driven. So, I'm not sure in certain periods of time if the market really wants you to go out and attempt to build a mine, or if they want you to build resource. But ultimately, your goal is to develop something towards cash flow, and certainly.
Or an access.
This is the environment where the uranium price is high enough to support, a lot of these swing producers in the U.S. And I think the market wants to see cash flow and projects that are, the way that I'm looking at the market. By 2030, we're going to need a whole bunch of smaller producers to backfill this supply gap. And that's kind of a position that we want to be in. And for sure, like you mentioned, the blueprint. Now, as you mentioned, a lot of these U.S. neo producers are transitioning towards production, and in that space, there aren't many companies like ours who are developing assets that will backfill their pipeline as they start to move, into the middle of their production stages for their assets. So, we want to have projects that are advanced enough to look attractive to companies who are in production and looking to extend their mine lives. So, I think that it's a very, very good condition, and I don't think that Premier has a bunch of comps that are at this stage. We look more like like some of these neo producers looked 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think there is a great analog for how to build out through acquisition, development, exploration a uranium company that's going to be attractive to the existing group.
Well, it just adds some level of comfort. As an investor, looking to this and saying, well, like there's some companies that are doing some of what you're doing, or if you piece them together, I can get a sense that, I see how that's done. I understand the economics. I understand the need for it. So in a way, it's easier to invest in a company like yours as a result of that. It's easier to fund a company of yours if I see that. And if you do on the acquisitions trail, you need to go and raise a chunk of change and go, well, that makes a lot of sense, because this is a risk mitigation strategy. It's also a very commercial strategy, because others won't be able to do what you do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the building of the portfolio, we're leaning on a really strong technical team to identify the projects that complement the existing asset packages. But for sure, we want to build something that is going to be legitimately attractive to existing producers, or that can be advanced to production on its own. So, we're using every resource that we have to make sure that we acquire the right things, spend the money the right way. And with each acquisition, acquisition being the first pillar, there's going to be an exploration and a development component that's going to cost money. The idea is that every dollar that we put in is going to be worth more to an investor.
What's the name of the game?
Yeah. Right. So we're definitely trying to leverage our skill sets to do that in the most efficient way.
Right. Now, how are you reading when you're scanning the horizon and seeing what's going on? There's obviously a lot of M&A happening out there, some better than others, some very big ones, some lots of little small ones. Do you think that there's an appetite for all of this M&A and funding all of this M&A from the kind of fund side of things?
I think we certainly got evidence of that in the last month or so. We've seen some large financings, in particularly for unannounced acquisition potential. And I think that's just evidence. In Wyoming, for example, we're seeing some M&A posturing at least, and I think that any transaction in the jurisdictions where we operate validates the jurisdiction and really highlights to investors that smart money is investing there and looking to acquire and build asset base there. So, all the M&A activity, I think, is just highlighting how attractive the space is to smart money. So I'm excited to see an increased level in M&A. On the other hand, it's a big part of our consolidation strategy. So it's a competitive environment. So we have to be very, very smart about what we acquire. And I think I've always said that, we're acquiring things that complement our existing asset package so that we can pay market for things and still be accretive to the company.
Right. Well, look, I guess you better get back downstairs and keep telling that story, because it's all going well. You're going to wrap up the drilling when, so towards the end of October in Wyoming?
We're going to wrap up Wyoming. You saw the news release on the recent drilling. We're about halfway. We expect that weather's going to terminate drilling somewhere towards the end of October, right around when you're going to be out.
Yep.
And between now and then, and certainly by the end of the program, we'll have a summary press release out with the results that we're getting. But, between now and then, we also expect to have some results. And we expect to be drilling in New Mexico somewhere towards year end. So we should be pretty newsy, and we're pretty excited about the results we're getting.
Good man. Thanks for coming over and seeing us.
Anytime.
Appreciate that.
Really appreciate your time.